There needs to be a bit more effort on the part of the government to make better efforts to meet with the folks in some more northern locations.
Tonight, the Chiefs of Ontario says the provincial government needs to do better when consulting about controversial Bill 5 legislation.
Is it the tobacco that I place, or with whom I share my space?
An up-and-coming Métis and Anishinaabe children's author is celebrating her latest release.
I'm doing this, I'm not going to run away. Like, you have to confront kind of this problem, this obstacle head on.
And we meet a Métis wrestler who's got his sights set on the 2028 Olympics. Good evening, I'm Savannah Kelly. Welcome to APTN National News. A new report released this week is highlighting the intersection between the disappearance of Indigenous women and human trafficking in Canada. According to the report by Thomson Reuters news agency, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and the Prince Albert Regina Saskatoon Triangle had the highest numbers of MMIWG cases. The report says Indigenous women can swiftly go from missing to appearing in sex ads, with Edmonton and Ottawa showing significant connections to the sex ad ecosystem. The report also states that Manitoba and Saskatchewan may be feeding victims to the flourishing Alberta oil and mining industries. The research used geospatial analysis to uncover trends of disappearances and sex ads featuring Indigenous women and girls across Canada to examine connections. In a statement, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs said the information is a painful confirmation of what families, survivors, and nations have been telling governments for decades. The AMC also called out the proximity of man camps to First Nations. The AMC says major projects continue to get the green light without enforceable safety guarantees or protections for our people, adding, quote, "That's what colonialism looks like in 2025. Saskatchewan RCMP has released its annual crime statistics ahead of the national report from Statistics Canada expected later this year. One concerning trend is the high rate of intimate partner violence. APTN's Rachel May has more on that story.
Interpersonal violence, as we know, is a prevalent problem right across the country, right across society.
Sergeant Nick Smith with the Saskatchewan RCMP Interpersonal Violence Unit says intimate partner violence, or IPV, makes up a large portion of the reports of violence they received in 2024. Smith says in Saskatchewan, over a quarter of all violent crimes are related to intimate partner violence, with offenses like criminal harassment, stalking, threatening phone calls, and marital violence making up many of those reports. He says that the RCMP does not track ethnicities of intimate partner violence unless it's a homicide, but the Mounties and other frontline agencies recognize there is a relationship between IPV and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
We do know that through our other justice partners, reporting of intimate partner violence, that Indigenous women and girls are typically overrepresented. Our stats reported the number of victims of interpersonal violence across RCMP jurisdiction, which makes up a significant portion of the province. Often we see higher rates of intimate partner violence or in northern and remote communities, and this area would of course include many Indigenous communities and First Nations.
In reports from Statistics Canada between 2009 and 2021, homicide rates against First Nations, Métis, and Inuit women and girls were 6 times higher than for non-Indigenous women and girls. Statistics Canada is set to release a national crime report later this year. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The head of the Chiefs of Ontario says Ontario's Ford government needs to do a better job when doing consultation meetings over the province's controversial Bill 5 legislation. Bill 5 has sparked a number of First Nations protests in the province, including when it was passed at the Ontario legislature this spring. A letter sent out by the province stated it will host a number of meetings with First Nations on the legislation this summer, including 2 stops in Toronto and 1 in each of London, Sudbury, and Thunder Bay. But Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Ontario, Abram Benedict, says none of the meetings are in the North's Ring of Fire, the area the government intends to use the legislation in order to fast-track the mining of critical minerals.
A number of them are very northern communities. Now, a number of them are north of Thunder Bay, and so it's not cheap for community leadership and technicians when we talk about regulation development to travel into Thunder Bay, and so there needs to be a bit more effort on the part of the government to make better efforts to meet with the folks in some more northern locations.
A fire raging near Lytton, British Columbia is currently classified as out of control. Numerous motorists have been posting videos of the fire on social media. The blaze is believed to be human-caused and is currently 1.5 kilometers wide and 10 kilometers from the town of Lytton. Fire officials are saying the next 72 hours are going to be a challenge because temperatures in the area are expected to soar into the high 30s. Large proportions of the town of Lytton were destroyed by wildfire in June of 2021. This latest wildfire has prompted the evacuation of Lytton and several of the First Nations in the area. A housing nonprofit in Whitehorse is now in charge of a supportive housing building. The organization replaces the building's former operator, a social services NGO, which has faced public backlash in recent years for its operation of the building. Sarah Connors tells us how the change of operators came to be and how it's going so far.
Interpersonal violence, as we know, is a prevalent problem right across the country, right across society.
Sergeant Nick Smith with the Saskatchewan RCMP Interpersonal Violence Unit says intimate partner violence, or IPV, makes up a large portion.
Controversial American musician Sean Foyt's planned August 20th concert in Winnipeg has had its permit denied. After having shows canceled in 6 provinces over public safety concerns, Foyt announced on social media that his concert set for Winnipeg Central Park would be going ahead. Foyt is known for his association with the Make America Great Again movement, his anti-2S LGBTQ+ and anti-women's rights statements, and anti-diversity comments on social media. The city denied the permit request Tuesday and hopes that the denial will set a standard for the future for public spaces and their safety. Provincial MLA Uzoma Asagwara represents the Central Park area. They said on Instagram that if you are against diversity or put others down, Central Park is not for you. An artist from Batchewana First Nation is using his art to help people change their lives for the better. We'll bring you that story after the break. Plus, how a Métis Anishinaabe writer's children's books encourage youth to embrace their identity.
We use that book a lot with junior intermediate grades at the beginning of the year when we talk about identity and getting to know our kids and building relationships and connections, because there's a lot of kids that can relate to being mixed.
Welcome back. Now for a story we tried to bring you earlier in the newscast. A housing nonprofit in Whitehorse is now in charge of a supportive housing building. The organization replaces the building's former operator, a social services NGO, which has faced public backlash in recent years for its operation of the building. Sarah Connors tells us how the change of operators came to be and how it's going so far.
This 16-unit supportive housing building in downtown Whitehorse has a new housing model and a new operator. The Yukon government, which owns the building, selected housing nonprofit the Safe at Home Society as its new operator earlier this spring. The organization officially took over the building on July 1st.
As an organization, we're really invested in building out the continuum of supports available to individuals.
The building was previously operated by social services NGO Connective, which has faced scrutiny in recent years over overdose deaths that took place at the building under its watch. But the Yukon government says the issue at hand wasn't Connective, but its Housing First model. Housing First provides housing to vulnerable people with no readiness requirements like sobriety or treatment. An independent review of the program last year found challenges with things like wellness checks and guest management. Meechin says those challenges stem from the fact leases under the Housing First model fell under the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, or RLTA.
Connective had to be following all of the various sort of protocols around, being navigating that legislation as they were trying to provide supports.
At the same time, the government's funding agreement with Connective to operate the building was coming to an end.
So that enabled us to, or prompted us to go out and look at what proposals could come from the community that would align with some of the learnings that we had from the review of Housing First.
Meechin says Safe at Home is now operating the building under a supportive housing model, which is considered transitional housing and doesn't fall under the RLTA. That means it can implement stricter safety measures.
More monitoring of who's coming and going, being able to check in with folks, do wellness checks.
According to Meechin, there's already been positive feedback from residents and neighbors living nearby.
People are noticing that things are quieter, that at times they feel safer.
Connective said in a statement it's disappointed the government went with another operator, but it's proud of the progress it made with the former program. Safe at Home's contract for the building will be in place for the next 3 years. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
An artist from Batchewana First Nation is using his art to help people change their lives for the better. Chad McKay recently began putting his art on t-shirts with the hope of reaching as many people as possible. His most recent project is focused on addiction recovery. APTN's Mike McDonald reports.
I got the heat press here. This is my vinyl cutter.
Chad McKay works out of this small space on Spring Street in downtown Sault Ste. Marie, referred to as the Art Hub at Spring, which serves as an exhibition space for local artists. McKay says the downtime caused by the COVID-19 pandemic spurred him to get creative.
I had an idea during COVID to incorporate my art and put it onto clothing to try and come up with a way of making a little bit of income. This way I could do this for the rest of my life and have fun doing something that I love.
McKay is working on a complete clothing line featuring his work. He says his inspiration comes from everyday life.
Whatever is kind of speaking to me and whatever it is that I'm going through, I will put out and put into a new piece of art, and then I'll try and find some meaning behind it. This way people can relate to it, right?
Seeing a need for awareness about addiction services, McKay came up with an idea to list local services on his t-shirts.
Recently, I've been working on this project called Road to Recovery, and the idea behind it is to promote the detox and rehabilitation centers in my local area, and I'm planning on releasing that hopefully in the next month or two.
McKay credits his mother for helping him to see his own potential, as well as inspiring him to live a sober life.
I wouldn't be here without my mom. She's been a huge inspiration to me. Shelly. She's inspired me to be sober myself. I haven't drank or used drugs in a few months, and I'm just so thankful that I have such a supportive parent to help me on this journey, and I'm really looking forward to just staying sober and being a good role model and influence on my community and hopefully people around the world.
McKay's work can be found on his website, thechadclothingbrand.com, as well as on his Instagram and Facebook pages. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
A First Nations author of children's books is celebrating her 5th book on the shelves. Her books are becoming increasingly popular, and as the author tells us, they come to light in an unusual way. Here's Annette Francis with that story.
Is it the tobacco that I place, or with whom I share my space? Is it the medicines that I burn, or the yoga time that I yearn?
Nikki Solomon is Métis and Anishinaabe. Her father later acquired status from his community of Batchewana, where she is also now a member. It's one of the inspirations for her children's book, Indigenous.
That story is kind of my journey, but I know so many other people can relate to it. And we use that book a lot with junior intermediate grades at the beginning of the year when we talk about identity and getting to know our kids and building relationships and connections, because there's a lot of kids that can relate to being mixed.
Solomon's writing career began during COVID in an unconventional sort of way with her first book, Bubbly Beth, about a girl who loves bubbles. The idea came on a sleepless night.
But toss and turn, could not get back to sleep. So I thought I better just write it down. So I wrote it down, and then in the morning my husband said, you didn't sleep last night. Why not? And I said, well, I think I wrote a story. And he said, oh, why? So I don't know why. But he said, well, let me hear it. And I said, okay, because I had just intended on writing it and putting it away and not looking at it again, probably. So I read it to him and read it to the kids. And he said, I think that's good. I think you could be an author.
Solomon says she likes to think her grandmother played a part in it.
My grandmother had passed away, and I couldn't go to her funeral because it was COVID. And I like to think that she helped me write this book. And so when I researched, I realized, okay, I can't afford it at this time, but I'll just keep it in the back of my mind. And my dad had come and said he settled my grandma's estate, and he had just happened to have some money that she thought she would want us to have. And so the amount that he gave me was exactly the amount needed to publish Bubbly Beth.
According to Solomon, the response to her books has been great.
When I came to Durham, and we had all these self-identified students that were sitting there, and a lot of them just new to this identity, and if they didn't go to a powwow and they didn't know about the medicine wheel, they didn't see themselves as being Indigenous, they didn't see themselves in those books. So I wanted to kind of normalize, humanize, and represent Indigenous characters in books so that a lot of people can kind of connect with that.
Since then, she's written 4 more books, all during those sleepless nights.
If you locked me in a room and told me to write a book, I might be there for years. I might never write a book. Like, they come to me, they find me when I'm sleeping. So all of my books have been written in one night.
Solomon's latest book, All My Relations, was just released. She says 2 more are in the works. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Scugog, First Nation.
We need to take one more quick break. Coming up, we'll tell you about a Métis wrestler who has his eyes on the 2028 Olympic gold.
I remember before I moved out here, I never thought or if I did win a national championship, that'd be the coolest thing ever. I've won 6 of them now.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Today's photo comes from Phil Lawrence in Manitokan, Alberta. Phil captured this stunning shot of a great white pelican during golden hour. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. If you want to be featured as our next photo of the day, whether of your travels, your community, or a new hobby you've started, send your pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the East Coast, 26 degrees for Halifax, 22 for Charlottetown. Nain, 8 degrees, Happy Valley Goose Bay, rainy and 16. Quebec City, 21, Saguenay, plus 19. Ottawa, 23 degrees, Sault Ste. Marie, 22. Elliott Lake, rainy and 23, Thunder Bay, 22. 25 for Churchill, 27 in Norway House. Winnipeg, 26 degrees, Barons River, 25. Regina, rainy and 27, sunshine and 28 for Saskatoon. 30 degrees in Stony Rapids, La Ronge, 30 degrees. 34 in sunshine for High Level in Peace River. Calgary, 28 degrees, Edmonton, 30. Tofino, 17 there, Canal, rainy and 33 degrees. Prince Rupert, rainy and 19, Dease Lake, plus 24. Watson Lake, rainy and 27, Rock River, 9. 29 degrees for Fort Simpson, Yellowknife, 28. Colville Lake, rainy and 14, Sax Harbor, plus 4. Baker Lake, plus 22 there, Nauyat, 15 degrees. Iqaluit, rainy and 12 degrees there, Iqaluit, sunshine and 12. Red River Métis wrestler Connor Church moved to Montreal 4 years ago to train at the Reinitz Wrestling Centre. The club trains Olympians, world champions, and young wrestlers looking to make it to the world stage. As Savannah Craig reports, this athlete from Winnipeg is training to compete in the 2028 Summer Olympics.
Crushing opponents is what Connor Church does best. He's just 22, but he's already won the Senior National Championships and the U23 National Championships. This summer, he was inducted into the North American Indigenous Athletic Hall of Fame, and in 2023 received the Tom Longboat Award, which celebrates Indigenous athletes for their contributions to sports in Canada.
I remember before I moved out here, I never thought or if I did win a national championship, that'd be the coolest thing ever. I've won 6 of them now.
Church moved to Montreal to train after his high school coach recommended the Montreal Wrestling Club. He trains with 2 coaches at the Sylvan Adams YMYWHA Community Center in Montreal. One of them is David Zilberman. He teaches Church more than physical strength, but also how to manage the psychological and emotional part of fighting.
There's a lot of stress involved with wrestling. You're essentially fighting somebody. So being able to regulate your emotions and manage them in a way that you can show up in a match and be alert and ready to go, but not too much where you're out of control and it just becomes chaos.
You are going through fight or flight every time, and you have to make that conscious kind of decision or have that mental discipline to realize I'm doing this, I'm not going to run away. You have to confront kind of this problem, this obstacle head on.
Church's love for wrestling came from a young age with encouragement from his father.
From 3 or 2 years old, I was doing karate, and then I was boxing, and then it was jiu-jitsu, and then it was kind of just every sort of martial art he can get me in.
Connor's brother, Ryder Church, also shares his family's love of martial arts. Ryder is also Connor's training partner.
It helps me keep consistent training, because even on the days I feel bad or, I have a bad day or I'm upset, he'll train or he'll come to practice and I gotta stay on it.
After all his wins, Church says he now has his eyes set on larger goals, including the 2028 Summer Olympics.
I want to, you know, do stuff internationally and be like an international competitor. That just wasn't even in my way of thinking before.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
And that's all the time we have for your Wednesday news. I'm Savannah Kelly. Marcy Miigwech, thank you for joining us. I'll be back here tomorrow with your first look at the news. Take care and have a great night.